All right, welcome back. The Fix is live, 7:30. So it's time to talk NFL and Eagles. Still plenty to get to. So let's do that now with our insider, Johnny Mack. John McMullen joins us every night at this time. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. PhillyVoice.com, SI.com is where you can find all of John's written work. You can listen to him daily on Birds 365. He's the co-host alongside Jody Mack, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. YouTube, JAKIB Media, PhillyVoice.com. Johnny Mack, how we doing on this Tuesday, my friend?
Good. How are you, Ryan?
Doing good. I listened to you a little bit earlier on both your show and, towards the end of the middle. I was listening to you. You jumped on with our guys, Harry and Shander. And that conversation was an interesting one. I know you were talking a little bit about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles and how, and you talked about it on this show as well, but how the Eagles should have maybe taken Fields. So I do want to get back into that because I thought that was a fun convo you were having with them earlier today.
Yeah, I've been pretty consistent. I didn't necessarily understand the whole philosophy of the quarterback position. And, I was on with Rich this afternoon. I kind of said the same thing. I don't understand this, we're going to give you a year type of thing. Either you believe in somebody or you don't believe in somebody. And that's what I kind of told Rich is that, look, you talk to any GM, any personnel guy in this league, they constantly say, well, the goal is to get better. It's not to, let's see what we have and then get better. It's evaluate what you have. Do you need to get better at this position? There are certain positions every NFL team knows they don't need to get better. They're good enough. In here, it's for years, the players, Fletcher Coxes of the world, the Brandon Grants, the Jason Kelce's, the Lane Johnsons, so on and so on. Just Carson Wentz for a while, too short a period. It's not about, now sometimes you are in a position, and we always talk about prove-it deals for veteran players. You can't have a star at every position. Sometimes you have to cobble things together. And you certainly sign veteran guys who are at that stage of their career, but that's more about money and that's more about circumstance and the fact that they can't get a better deal, so you sign them to one-year deals. I don't understand that the most important position for an organization that calls themselves the quarterback factory, and while Howie is, would like to take that back, he obviously can't. I don't get that philosophy. I don't think I'll ever get that philosophy. Let's see what we have for a year. We have big-time prospects available. I don't know. I don't get it, but we'll see how it works out. Maybe. And one thing I can't tell you is there is that curveball because it came up late in the process that Fields is dealing with epilepsy. It's possible the medical team flagged him. He wasn't involved in the decision-making. Well, I'm pretty sure he wasn't involved. They weren't considering a quarterback at all. But I thought when they started this process, they certainly, when they were at 12, when they traded down, they didn't think any of the major quarterbacks would be there. Even when they traded up to 10, they probably didn't think Fields would be there. Maybe worst case scenario, Mac Jones would be there. Turns out both were there. And I don't know. I think that's a big time prospect at the game's most important position and should have been considered. And they seem to have tunnel vision towards either the corner or the receiver. I don't know. Doesn't sound like something the quarterback factory should be doing.
I look at it really in two different ways, and I've brought both of these points up to you in the past, but they are, one, kicking the can down the road, and they're saying this is a rebuild. And they get the offensive lineman in Dickerson with that 37th overall pick. I think that tips their hand a little bit, and then they go get the wide receiver when Howie said it himself. That's not a pick that they typically do. You wrote about that. That's not something they typically do. So let's make the fan base happy. Let's go get the Heisman winning wide receiver, going offense first 2 picks. We'll let Jalen Hurts run around for a season, and then next season, that's when we'll really do what we want to do and try and gear up, for the short and long term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's clearly what they're thinking. There's no doubt about that. And they'll say, if we need to, we'll go get the quarterback next year. But, people pretty consistently said this was a historic quarterback class. Obviously, we won't know if that's hyperbole. There's certainly not going to be any Trevor Lawrence at the top of next year's class. We know that. That doesn't come around. But that's not that meaningful because you weren't in a position to get him anyway. Nobody was, except Jacksonville with the number 1 overall pick. So the question is that the other guys, Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and are the guys next year? Well, I don't know. I mean, Dane Brugler came out with his first 2022 mock draft, which is silly. Yeah, granted, but he had 4 quarterbacks in the top 10. I mean, so guys are going to go up the board. So maybe the Eagles are right. Maybe it'll be the same. Maybe it'll be wrong. But I guess I don't understand the stasis. And what I've always pointed to, I was trying to count it up. I got out the scratch pad. I think I talked to 15 different personnel evaluators. 15, both on the air and off the air. When you count them all up, and I asked every single one of them the same question. Didn't even put Lawrence and Wilson in the conversation because they weren't, they were out of reach. Everybody knew that. Even if they stayed at 6, they were never going to get those 2, even if they traded up from 6. So I put them out of the equation, put Mac Jones out of the equation because I don't think they were interested. I don't think he belongs in that top tier guys. I think he was in that, sort of second tier in the one as the 5th best quarterback. So I asked every single one of them, what is Hurts? Could he be as good as Fields or Trey Lance? And every single 15 said, nope, not close. Wow. So what are the Eagles seeing that everybody else? Now, if it were 10-5, I'd say, well, it doesn't matter. At least there's some people who think. Even 12-3. 15 of 15 said it's not close. So I will never understand that. I will never understand that.
I mean, with you saying all of that, John, I have to, and we'll never know this. This is maybe a hot take, but the Eagles are just trying to get off the fan base's radar and make the fans happy. They fire Doug. You trade Carson Wentz. You bring in an under 40 coaching staff. You're inserting Jalen Hurts for a year. You go get the Heisman winner wide receiver in Devontae Smith. You go get Dickerson. All of it just points to, and then everything that you said, that you did your research as to prospects in the draft compared to Hurts. Obviously, Howie and Lurie know this to a degree, so they're just placating to a fan base for a year and trying to get everyone off their backs. I know that maybe sound ridiculous, but I don't. Can you think of a better reason, or that makes more sense at least?
I can't explain the quarterback thing. I hope that's not the case. I don't think that's the case. I mean, it's a disaster. No offense to this fan base, any fan base. I compared it to San Francisco because everybody in this league thought the 49ers were going up to get Mac Jones. And then at the last minute, they take Trey Lance. So there was the speculation they changed their mind. They heard some of their outside voices. They got scared. They didn't want to do it at the end because most teams didn't evaluate him as being up that high. I don't think that's the case. For whatever reason, they didn't need to. It kind of points out the silliness of the NFL at some, they didn't have to play this game because they knew Jacksonville was taking Lawrence. They knew the Jets were taking Wilson. They didn't have to play the subterfuge game. They could take any quarterback they wanted after those two. At no point was anybody, were the Jets going to trade down, so nobody could trade up. They were literally bulletproof, and they're still going through these silly games. But ultimately, I think they got the player they wanted. Now, at the last minute, they tried to trade for Aaron Rodgers. That's different. That was a curveball, and that was understandable. But why NFL teams play that game, I don't know. They think, they're protecting state secrets, and they think they're closer to the CIA than, playing a child's game for a lot of money. So that part of it's silly. But I do not believe they kowtow to outside voices. I don't think the Eagles are trying to placate the fan base. I think they think Smith is a great player. I think they think Waddle was a great player, and I think they think Surtain. So it was Surtain. So 3 players from Alabama. I think that's one of the 3 players they wanted. And I think it was just a strange year because typically, as we said, they're often, and even Howie said after the draft, that's how we're going to do it. People get sick of it, but they're going to build on the offensive and defensive lines, and they did that the rest of the draft. It was just a year where at the tippy top, there weren't a lot of people they thought that deserved to be up there. So that part of it, I get. That part of it, I understand. But leaving the quarterback position out of it, my guess, and this is just pure speculation, they went through such a horrific time with the mistake they made last year, they didn't want to do it again. But, you are just kicking the can down the road because ultimately you're going to do it next year, arguably with a worse prospect. I guess that's my point. Unless you get a veteran.
Right. I want to talk about Jalen Hurts a little bit more, but let's just look at the quarterback position. I don't think I officially asked you this, so I might as well. Can the Eagles trade for Aaron Rodgers? How interested do you think they are? Of course they're interested, but how serious? Phone calls being made? Could they realistically pull it off? Or is that not even logistically possible?
No, from their standpoint, I don't. I just don't think Aaron Rodgers would want to play here. And it's, he just doesn't want to be on the East Coast. He's a West Coast guy. He wants to be close. He wanted to play in San Francisco, but wanted to play in San Francisco from day one. And I think ultimately, I said he's probably going to end up in Denver because of John Elway. But, I think it's probably the Raiders, Denver. San Francisco, unfortunately for his sake, is out of it because of what they did. I just don't think he wants to play. So it's got nothing to do with the Eagles. I just don't think he wants to play on the East Coast.
Yeah, but it's not really his decision, right? Like the Packers can say, we're not trading you, sit out, we'll take the money back. Or they could say, we'll trade you where we want to, or we'll trade you to one of those 2 or 3 teams. So it's not like he has full control here in this situation, right?
No, but he's got a lot of control as a superstar player, as the best quarterback in football, as the MVP. And just everybody knows his personality in this league. This is a guy, and the biggest hammer he has, in my estimation, and what I think he's going to do, ultimately, is pull the Carson Palmer. And he's just going to tell the Packers, if you don't trade me, if you don't trade me to where I want to go, or where at least somewhere that's acceptable to me, I'm just going to retire. He's made a ton of money. He's got other interests. He does have one Super Bowl, even though he's disappointed by, I put that in quotations, only one Super Bowl. He's going in the Hall of Fame, first ballot. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever lived. He doesn't have a lot to prove. I think he will retire. Now, I think it'll be a Carson Palmer retirement, as I said, where it's a wink-wink retirement, but said, I'm not playing for you. And if you want to play chicken, he'll go sit out in California for a while and force him to trade him. That's ultimately, if the Packers don't come to that realization, I think that's what's going to happen.
Deshaun Watson and the Eagles were linked really early on in, the reports of Watson is going to be elsewhere, and before all the other legal stuff came to the surface. Is there any updates on Watson? And then we can just throw in Russell Wilson real quick. It just seems like Wilson's going to be in Seattle, and that was a little bit smoke and mirrors. But talk about those two guys.
Yeah, I do think Russell's going to be this year, but next year I don't think he's going to be in Seattle. So I think that's one of the situations where they kind of know, because of how the contract is structured, it's going to be really difficult to move on. There was an interesting, why not trade Russell Wilson for Aaron Rodgers? He obviously finished up his college career at Wisconsin. Seattle's a pretty good team on the West Coast. Could you do that kind of trade? Pete Carroll, John Snyder obviously grew up in the Packers organization, but I think that would be a detriment at this point for Aaron. So that's an interesting thing some people floated, but I don't think that's going to happen. I do think Russell's going to be in Seattle and then be out next year. But they have a year to figure things out, so maybe they can make him happier. Deshaun, obviously, it's the legal situation, but I do. These quarterbacks are amazing. I mean, I don't know where they got in their head, whether it is LeBron James, whether it is NBA players. I mean, Aaron wants to be involved in personnel decisions. Russell wants to be involved in personnel decisions. Deshaun wants to pick the GM and the coach. I mean, these guys are nuts.
Is there any quarterback that has that, John?
No.
No, Tom Brady at his peak in New England. I know that may sound crazy, but
no.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons Tom left. Tom's got a little more input in Tampa. I mean, but they just make him happy. But,
right.
You want Gronk. They want Gronk anyway. So it's not like.
Right.
But, from the standpoint of, okay, if you look at Rodgers, I joke, Matt LaFleur has no power in personnel. The head coach had no power in Green Bay. We talk about it in Philly. People don't understand. I say this all the time, because even media people, they got used to Andy Reid and Andy Reid's power, which when he was here was very significant. And there's not a lot of circumstances like that around the league. So when Doug got here and he didn't have any power, people were calling him the ficus plan, all that kind of stuff. That's more like the traditional NFL setup. The GM, so to speak, gives the players to the coach, and the players play. And Green Bay is the best example of that because, it's the personnel department and the coaching staff has nothing to stink and do with it, and everybody stays in their lane. And we had Andrew Brandt, who ran the Packers for 10 years, dating back. That's how they've always done it, and that's how they're always going to do it. And in a lot of ways, Aaron's even worse than Brett Favre. We all go back to Brett Favre and his constant. Brett was just about, he didn't want to go to Green Bay in the offseason. Nobody does. And he just wanted to stay at home in Mississippi, and he didn't want to go work out in the offseason, show up in September and play. That was his issue. And he could do it. But the Packers obviously, wanted more of a presence. The quarterback position by its nature has to be a leadership position, all that kind of stuff. It was just a bad look to not have the leader of the team working with the players in the offseason. Aaron, he wants to be involved. He wants to be involved with the practice squad receiver. What the hell is going on with these guys? I can't even fathom it.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point you have to have, as good as these guys are, and they're all great, you got to have some. I mean, I don't even think coaches should get involved because there's not enough time in the day. And they think they could pick personnel? It's astonishing to me.
All right, so I'm going to play defense lawyer for a second and give me your thoughts. You look at those three guys, they're all in crappy situations, at least they think they are, and I think we can all agree they are. The Texans have been a mess. Russell Wilson, no one's been sacked more. We all know why Rodgers is upset with the Packers, so they're all sitting there, those three guys, at the top of their game, all elite in different aspects, and they're saying our teams are idiots, and they're doing the opposite of helping us. They're actually hurting us. I need to go elsewhere. And can we talk a little bit before you make these idiotic picks? That's how I look at it. Or are they literally saying, I want to be in that draft room, and that's an exaggeration, I want to be in that draft room and make these picks with you, John?
Well, no, I don't think they're going that far, but I do think they're talking about pretty much their purview. So, you know, their quarterbacks, they want receivers and right. They're like fans in some instances. So they always want skill position players. And quarterbacks should know better than anyone. I mean, they should want offensive linemen first. We just saw it in Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati should have took Penei Sewell to protect Joe Burrow. Instead, they took Jamar Chase to make him happy. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be happy with a torn ACL again, but we'll see. And that's not a criticism of Jamar Chase because he's a very good player. But again, left tackle is just more important, and they don't have a left tackle, so it becomes even more important. And we'll see how things shake out for Cincinnati. But I would argue that Green Bay and Seattle are two of the best run teams in the NFL, and they have been. And other people will argue, well, that's because of the quarterback. Okay. Well, in Green Bay's situation, look, they've been great for 30 years. They were great before Rodgers gets there. We'll see what they are after, and time will probably run out on them, at least for a little bit of a cycle. And in Seattle's instance, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with Pete Carroll and John Snyder and the way they built their team. You bring up the sacks. I mean, I got news for you. No matter where Russell Wilson plays, he's going to be one of the most sacked quarterbacks because of the way he plays. And he's always trying to extend plays, and he's always – so that's part of it. When you talk about Aaron getting upset at receivers, you know, part of the reason the Packers don't go all in on receivers, and by the way, they have Devontae Adams, who might be certainly a top 5 receiver in football. But one of the reasons they don't is admittedly because Aaron is so good, and he turns people like Robert Tonyan into Pro Bowlers. So he elevates receivers. So they give him David Bakhtiari. He's the best left tackle in football. They give him Corey Linsley for, you know, years and years and years. He's one of the best centers. They draft Brian Bulaga in the first round. They draft Elgin Jenkins last year, turns into a stud at guard his first season. Like, they're building around him. They're just not, you know, last year won a receiver. And so you can make the argument they should have taken a receiver last year. But who were they taking? Were they going to take Jalen Reagor? Were they going to take Brandon Ayuk? I don't know. Does that make him better? Certainly, because Jordan Love doesn't play. I guess you can make that argument. But how much better are they going to be from 13 wins in an NFC Championship game? I don't know. They were right back again. I don't agree, and I've never agreed. I've told you that before, Ryan. I think it's unfair. You know what I think of Aaron Rodgers as a player.
Yeah.
But I think I think it's very unfair that he thinks the Packers haven't built around him. I just think he wants, almost like a fan, he wants the sizzle, and he doesn't want the steak. And if he didn't have the steak, you'd be upset the opposite way. I mean, that's his personality.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. I get both sides of the Rodgers fence of he's being a you-know-what and he's doing what's best for him and it's all good. It's murky, and it's going to be interesting. Obviously, the MVP, where he could end up leaving Green Bay potentially. John, I want to end the conversation with this. Zach Ertz. I mean, the Eagles didn't draft a tight end, and Howie commented on Zach Ertz. Well, he was asked about Zach Ertz, and he said Zach's a really good player, a really good person, and he's under contract with the Eagles. We have a lot of respect for him and what kind of player he is and what he's done. But this isn't a guy in the twilight of his career. He's a guy still in his prime. And I'll end it there. Can Zach end up being back here? What's it looking like for you at this moment, John?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be back. I mean, I was talking to Les Bowen the other day, and Les got in touch with Zach because Zach is the Eagles player representative. So he was talking about the off-season work and about the union recommending the players don't show up, which they're even going to recommend for the rookies as well. So we'll see how that shakes out. But, you know, Les was telling me that Zach it wasn't even involved. He was like, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, and from his standpoint, and again, it's secondhand, but from Les's standpoint, it seemed like it seems like he has moved on, which I've confident that's what I got from him as well in other aspects. Like in his mind, he is done with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I do think it's one of those instances where if you bring him back, you got a player that doesn't want to be here, and then you got to deal with those kind of circumstances with a young quarterback that you're supposedly trying to build around. I don't know if that's the best situation. Also, I don't think the Eagles want to press this issue because I think there are things from Zach's perspective that you can point to. The fact that he played in the playoffs with a lacerated kidney and broken ribs, and the Eagles didn't exactly reward him for that. I don't think they want that headache, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm still at 90-10. He's not going to be here. The only reason I even leave it open 10% is because ultimately I do think he's a professional. And if he has to come back, he would be a professional, and he would play out his contract and then just go somewhere else next year. So I guess there's a slight, the door is slightly ajar, but I still don't think he's going to be here.
Yeah, I'm with you, and that ain't right. Like, it seems like right now that Howie in the front office could possibly take advantage of Zach being a pro and such a nice guy, and Howie being stubborn on what he could get back for Zach Ertz in a trade, where if he doesn't like any offer, he's like, well, we know Zach's going to do the right thing. Well, let's keep him.
Yeah, and I think that's, sort of their safety net perspective, that he is such a professional, and I think they think he'd be a good soldier. But I think you saw last year he was unhappy, and it was a different guy, and he wasn't effective. And a lot of it was due to that, because he was so unhappy.
Yeah.
So do you really want to go through that again? Doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't. All right, John McMullen, everyone. We have to get to the top of the hour break. Follow John on Twitter at JFMcMullen. We'll do it again tomorrow night, same time. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep, there he is. Johnny Mack, Birds 365, every morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. A lot of good stuff there. We'll recap it when we come back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.